Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another One Piece chapter review. Today, One Piece chapter 1187 is here, and we are getting all the good action here. It is a action-packed chapter, all right? We're getting the reveal of a new Conqueror's Haki user. We're getting the reveal about more of Imu's powers, all right? As well as the massive introspection on Sanji's character, all right? We're finally going to learn more about him and what's been holding him back from finally breaking through that top-tier power that so many characters have been using, as well as he's been trying to reach himself, all right? And the chapter is all action. We're finally going to get a new set moment that's going to be set up for later in this arc. Loki has been taken out of commission, so we're not going to be seeing him for the rest of this fight, at least for the foreseeable future, and that's all good in here today, all right? All right, and this chapter is honestly one that basically introduces us to the concept that this final fights of ELBAPH, Sanji versus Killingham, Zoro versus Summers, and Luffy versus IMU, all right? And I can hear people in the comments saying, no, wait, IMU is supposed to be Luffy's final opponent. No, that is not how this works. Teach has always been set up as Luffy's final op, okay? Because Teach, Blackbeard, and his crew are the antithesis, the evil versions of the Strawhats, right down to their very nature. I mean, for God's sakes, Katarina Devon's whole thing is she likes to kill beautiful women, all right? And as soon as she sees Nami and Robin, it's on. But that's what we're going to talk about today. If you're still here, I got a stat for you. About 98.9% of you watching this channel are not subscribed. If you're still here, you're 2 minutes in almost. Drop for me. And like, comment, subscribe. Anything goes a long way against the demon that is algorithms. But let's get into it, all right? And so the chapter starts off with an adorable cover request by the One Piece fan, Nebu D 42 Land 420 Blaze, baby. And the chapter cover is basically Reiju protecting a duckling from its abusive swan family, and that duckling she's protecting looks like her brother Sanji, and the swans that are abusing it are her father Judge, her brothers Niji, Yonji, and Ichi, Ninji, and Yonji all abusing this duckling. So this is basically a shout out to everything Reiju did for Sanji growing up as kids. Which, in all honesty, she didn't do a whole lot. She just basically fed him food and patched him up. But still, I mean, she was like the one person in his entire family that treated him with kindness after their mother died. And so that's very sweet right here. And it's also, you know, going to be a Sanji focused chapter. And the duckling does have that Reiju's protecting is giving a smart grin. So clearly it's nestled in her bosom, as we can see here. But that's pretty much it. All right. And so the chapter immediately just cuts right to the action. All right. And it just follows basically Luffy punching Imu right in his schnoz, deck him in the schnoz, all right? If those of you got that reference, good on you. And then we see Loki's reaction. He's stunned. He's like, whoa, that was hardcore. I know I'm an ancient giant with Conqueror's Haki and 2 mythical zone powers, but man, that's pretty damn hardcore. And we see Imu's face, his demon face, just be like, face planted in it, and he is sent flying, okay? I mean, like a freaking rocket. That attack was laced with Conqueror's Haki, okay? And I'm of the opinion, if Imu wasn't as strong as he was, that attack would have done some serious damage to him. Like, say, for example, if it was Kizaru or even Akainu, that would have, like, you know, stunned them a little bit. But Imu basically tanks it, and he just continues to fight, as we see, all right? And then we just see the impact of it. It breaks the shockwaves. It just causes a boom, and we see everything that happens from there, all right? And then we just move on. We see Imu, all right, using the mantra signs or the omen signs, and he just casts up. He creates 2 small black living flames. Now, these flames are sentient, and this is something that we saw when Imu first descended into ELBAPH way back in the beginning of 1179. The houses were coming alive, the trees were coming alive, and his abilities, the devil's fruit. Now, I'm of the opinion, since Imu is the devil's man, he is the progenitor of all devil fruits, and so this means that some abilities, or a lot of abilities, can trace them back to him, because this is basically a modified version of the soul fruit of what he's doing. So bringing inanimate things to life and using his own power to do it. And so then he attacks those 2 flames onto Luffy and Loki, and we'll see what he's been doing, okay? And then we see a little back and forth between Luffy and Loki says, hey, that's pretty impressive, all right? But, you know, the only reason why you're able to get a hit off on him, all right, is because I softened him up for you. And again, how true this is, we don't know. I mean, given given Loki's personality and everything we know about him, that's a possibility that he just doesn't want to give Luffy praise, and he's just like, yeah, no, yeah, I know you only got tough because I got it, and this could be true, but in all honesty, I don't think it really matters because again, Luffy sent him hard, and IMU is just completely unaffected. Yeah, his mouth and nose are bleeding, but that doesn't matter at all. And, Loki says, you're the only reason why you're here, all right? Don't try to steal my kill. Don't try to steal my kill. If you ever play any kind of game, when you're playing with a team, when somebody tries to steal your kill, it's like, it just pisses you off. And then Luffy responds, hey, you good, bro? You seem kind of hurt. That's a really bad injury you got there, all right? You need to just chill out, relax for a little bit. And again, I do appreciate that Luffy does care about Loki in that respect. Their relationship's been a little, back and forth antagonistic, but he clearly cares about him. He's like, yeah, no, join my crew. Come on, become a member of the Straw Hat crew. It'll be fun. And it's just, their dynamics have been funny lately. And then we just see, Loki respond. He's like, relax. Who do you think you're talking to, you little human shit? I am the son of King Harold. I am an ancient giant user. I possess Conqueror's Haki. I've got 2 mythical zones. I am the rightful king of ELBAPH, and you ain't taking shit with me, all right? I am not relaxing. Who do you think you're talking to? And we just see the response. And then we see the 2 flames latch on to Loki and Luffy, because now these flames appear, and IMU is getting ready to launch his attack. And then Luffy responds that now that IMU's coming back, Luffy responds, whoa, man, he's even more nasty looking up close in person. How do we deal with that? And then we just say, and then Luffy also responds that, what's with these black flames? They don't burn at all. They don't hurt at all. This is alluding to the fact that when IMU uses his tendrils and his blob form to hit you, as well as the fact that when you see the black flames get hit, there are small bullets left, according to Zoro. And so these aren't your typical flames, all right? Then IMU lines up his Omen Fire. He lines it up like a scope, all right? And the 2 flames on Loki are told specifically, I have it right here, all right? They were told specifically, all right? They were told to wait above the belly, right where the sword had entered. The flames come to life and they morph into 2 on Loki, and they move directly above his belly where he had been stabbed by IMU when he was using his demon sword that looked exactly like Mihawk's Yoru blade. So, made a video that if Mihawk is from the Nerona family, hopefully that turns out to be true. And then IMU lines up, and then he uses a technique called Stigma. And then it's basically him lining up a scope, and then he fires a boom, massive black flame attack shaped in another, Yoru style shaped blade. And then we just see him just blast both Luffy and Loki. And then Luffy dodges it. He moves out of the way. Loki could not. And then he immediately just gets run through. And we just see him get run through, okay? So that's the first thing. And, we see when the damage occurs. Now, this technique pretty much is basically going to be a line of sight thing where basically IMU uses the black fires as targets, and he's like, okay, I'm going to scope out, and then boom, I'm going to hit you right where it hurts. And then we just see IMU basically launch an attack at them. Loki has been seriously injured. Now, granted, he has been through a ton of shit. We saw him panting when he was talking to Luffy. And remember, Loki was basically been tortured by Gunko and Shamrock for a while. He was brutalized, okay? And so he's not 100% when he was going into this fight, and so he's even worse off now. Now, he's not going to die anytime soon. Oda wouldn't just introduce a character to kill him off. I mean, come on. This isn't Game of Thrones. And so we just see him get run through, and he coughs up blood, and he is just sent reeling back, okay? And then we immediately cut away to what the Straw Hats, rest of the crew, was doing. Because remember, all the way back when this flashback first started, all right, at 1183, all right, we see Gunko being frozen in ice still, all right. And at the end of Brook's flashback in the previous chapter, the Straw Hats were like, okay, we'll help you free her, Brook. Now, and a lot of people were thinking okay, how are they going to free her? Because when Loki spoke, about Ragnar's ice, he said, nobody but Ragnar can unfreeze that ice. That is Ragnar's ice. No one can unfreeze it. And when IMU first ascended into ELBAPH in 1180, he basically took a shot of his Omen Fire and blasted at it, and it did absolutely nothing. So yes, nobody but Ragnar can unfreeze this ice, and we're going to see him unfreeze the ice right now. But before we do that, we see all the Straw Hats' reactions trying to unfreeze it. All right, Jinbei responds, "Man, nothing's working. What are we doing? All right." And then, Usopp responds, "This can't really be ice." And then Frankie comments, "It's more like diamond or anything else." And then, Nami responds like, "Wait, hold on. She's been in there for a minute. Is chance she's been a lack of oxygen has gotten to her and she's dead already to begin with, all right?" And then we just see Brook walk up to the ice and he touches it. He's like, maybe a skeleton with the powers of the undead, but this doesn't look cold. It looks cold to the touch, but I'm not actually feeling any cold. And then Nami responds, wait, hold on. You're not feeling any cold when you're looking at this thing? And you see a reaction from Frankie. Frankie's like, yeah, you're right. I'm not feeling any cold either. This thing's a little weird, all right? And then Nami responds, wait, so you're telling me the non-humans in our crew, the cyborg and the skeleton, can't figure out what's cold? Now, this is basically alluding to the fact that that this ice is mythical ice. Remember, Ragnar is Ratatoskr, the ice squirrel, and he has a technique called Niflheim. Niflheim is the land of the ice, all right? It's one of the 9 realms of Norse mythology, so this ice isn't your typical ice, all right? And in all honesty, if any of the most powerful characters in this series, all right, be it Loki, be it Emu, be it Akainu, Kaido, if they wanted to try to blast through this ice, it would not work, okay? Electrical attacks, magma attacks, fire attacks, it would not work. I don't think anybody else could break through this ice, and so it's not really your typical normal shade of ice. We just don't see it. And so we just continue on from there, all right? And then we just see all the Straw Hats' reactions when they say, all right, enough you changeling humans, we can't do enough. And then immediately we see a panel of Loki, who'd been sent flying back by the stigma, which, by the way, the word stigma is used as resentful demon attack. So that fits Imu's, aesthetic. And then so Loki is sent flying back, and then he crash lands on top of the hammer, the ice cube. And then Ratatoskr, all right, Ragnar, essentially follows him since he was thrown with him. And then he ends up, and Ragnar squeak, squeak. And then he immediately appears in his squirrel form, all right? And then as soon as that happens, Ragnar slams his hammer, and Ragnar in hammer form slams against the ice. And then we see all the Straw Hats' reactions. Oh no, was he beaten? All right. And then it's been like, and then all the Straw Hats are like, wait, he's been stabbed in the chest. Somebody get Chopper. We need to help right away. And so Loki immediately just passes out. So he's out of the fight for the rest of this battle. Okay. And some people are asking, oh no, Loki's trash. No. Loki is an ancient giant with Conqueror's Haki, and he can just do all these amazing things. But the problem is, when you're that big, you're a much more massive target. We saw this at Marineford with Oris Jr. He was basically a target to get lined up. So dodging certain attacks, he can't do. And the only way to do it is to tank it or block it. And the fact that he got hit with those tiny little flames that he couldn't really see, it's like, wait, what's this? And then immediately just got boom, right through it. No. That's not what this says. He's not weak. He's not overrated. No, he just couldn't handle the full power that is, Imu's attack, and the fact that he couldn't dodge it either. Luffy could because of his smaller size and everything, and the fact that he's, rubber free, them, all that jazz. But no, that Loki can't. He's a bigger target. So there are pros and cons to his fighting style. You're bigger, you're stronger, but you're also slower, and you're more likely to take attacks. Now, most attacks he can just tank, like, boom, no problem. He can tank them. And the fact is, he just didn't have the speed or ability to dodge those attacks. So we'll just see it from there. And then Ragnar immediately goes squeak, squeak, runs over to his master. Because remember, Ragnar had been waiting 800 years for a new master. He had been waiting 800 years. Many a giants had come to him in the hopes of gaining his powers, of trying to wield him and the Needhawk fruit. But time and time again, he bested them, and they were not worthy to wield him and claim the Needhawk fruit. It wasn't until 14 years ago, when Loki finally injured him, that he deemed him worthy. And then he was overjoyed, just crying happiness, saying, yes, I finally have a new master. I've been waiting 800 years to finally go out and see the world again. And so for Ragnar, he's got to go over his master's side to help him, because he does not want to see Loki die, because that means he would need to find another new master, and the chances of another ancient giant with Conqueror's Haki showing up anytime soon is almost just zero. There's no way he's going to find anyone but Loki for the next few centuries, so he's got to stick his hopes up for him. And then we see immediately cut away to the ice being melted. And then because Ragnar had slammed into it, Ragnar willed it, the ice is beginning to melt, all right? And then we see Brooke's reaction to seeing Gunko, calling her Princess Shuri. There you are. And we go from there. Now, something I want to bring up. Ragnar is still there. Loki is out of commission. Now, this is perfect, I mean just perfect opportunity for Usopp to pick up Ragnar and use it. Okay, because again, Usopp had been hyped up for ELBAPH for years, almost decades essentially, and his performance in this arc, outside of calling Imu a long-nosed hoed bitch, has done nothing in this arc. It has been a complete disappointment. All right, I've been hoping. I made a video saying, "Hey, come on, Usopp. I'm not sure if it's gonna look like it's your arc, but please give me something. You got to give me something to work with." I was hoping that was wrong. but it didn't look like he was going to give you anything. But now this is a golden opportunity for Usopp to pick up Ragnar and use it, okay? For what reason, I don't know. But again, this is his best chance, okay? This is how it's going to work out, because now we need Usopp to do something, all right? Nope. I'm going to reiterate. Usopp hasn't done anything useful, like in terms of like narrative story, since Dressrosa. That was 11 years ago. And people say, oh, well, it can't be that bad. Well, pre-time skip Usopp actually did something at least once every story arc, okay? He had his moments in Water 7, and he's, again, his fight against Luffy, and his lobby. He did some amazing things in Alabasta. And so, again, Usopp, outside of Dressrosa, has given me nothing. And I'm trying to believe in my man. I'm trying to support the God Usopp, but it's been hard to believe. So this is a major moment where Usopp can at least try to redeem himself, at least in my eyes, and give me something. All right, and then we see cut back to Luffy versus IMU. Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy, Straw Hat Luffy is now fighting the king of the world, the devil man, Saint IMU Nerona. And it is glorious, all right? We are seeing him fight, and we just see IMU basically try to use the Black Omen Flames once again to line up Luffy. They're on his shoulders. He lines up the attack and fires another Stigma attack at Luffy. Luffy removes his cloak and just bolts it out of the way. Again, if you're fast and quick enough to dodge these attacks, you can be fine. But Loki, as an ancient giant, he cannot. So that makes complete sense why he's not able to do that, all right? And so then we just see Luffy dodge it, and then IMU glares at him just like, joy boy. And so we're seeing the fight set up between Luffy, Loki, IMU, and just Loki's out of the fight. Loki's not coming back in this fight. He's concussed. He's not coming back, at least not for a while. And so we're gonna see, Luffy fight against IMU. All right, and now we get set up to the other main fights of this arc. Okay, and then we go back to the Sea Cloud port near the West Village. All right, and it is Zoro versus Summers. All right, and then Zoro walks up to Summers and says, look who it is, one of the three demons. And then Summers is like, wait, a Straw Hat? What are you doing here? All right. He's like, weren't you in the village? Are you looking for another beating? He actually says they're looking for another beating. Summers, are you coping? Because you were sliced up into little tiny pieces until your daddy IMU showed up and bailed you out and gave you some power. Okay. Like, you're not, like, the God's Knights have been on fraud watch for like the whole arc. Like, we saw what happened to Garland getting his ass kicked by rocks, and then we see the guys that get bitched around by Scopper Gaban, and then Luffy and Loki basically just ran roughshod over them. Zoro basically chopped Summers up in tiny pieces, and we just see Summers being like, oh yeah, you came for another beating. I'm like, dude, that was your boss that did that. What did you do? You just basically walked around like you were the shit, and you're like, oh no, I totally got this. I'm Saint Summers, all right? I'm saying Jupiter Summers, all right? I got this, all right? I'm totally fine. I'm like, no, you don't. You got your ass kicked like a bitch. And suddenly you're acting like, oh, you're all hot shit in a champagne glass. Like, no, you're not. Summers, you're trash. You're overrated. You got your teeth kicked in. And the only reason you're talking this shit is because you got the Hagoromo Omen Black Flame behind you. You are not that tough. You are not the one, so don't try to be, okay? And then, as little rant aside, we see Zoro says, oh, you bastards, man, we were supposed to have an awesome party, drink tons of booze, eat lots of good food, and hang out with our friends and reunite with them, and you absolutely ruined it, all right? And then Summers, in a rare moment of just like, I don't know whether he's just trolling or he's just being sarcastic as shit. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry about that. That is my mistake. I did not mean to incur that kind of wrath. No. You see, you don't understand, okay? Hey, we were just here to take about 10, maybe 20 or so giant kids, all right? At most, all right? My associate's coming along with the kids right now. Once he grabs them and goes, we'll be out of your hair, all right? I said in the beginning, I didn't want to fight a Yonkos crew. That was my idiot friends that wanted to pick a fight with you guys. I just wanted to grab the kids and go, okay? Once we do that, we'll pretend this never happened, all right? I'll fade a zang. I'll see you around, all right? And then Zoro responds in a very calm and cocky manner. He's like, oh, huh? That's where he's at, the West Village, huh? That's funny, because, that's where one of my associates is as well, right? And he says associates. He should have said crewmate, but whatever. What a coincidence. One of my associates is there right now in the village, all right? But I don't think your guy will be coming back. And then someone responds, may I ask why? And then Zoro, in his trademark grin, is like, because he'll be dead. And then we immediately see attack with Summers, just launch into a thorn attack. And then he says, you really have no idea, all right, just how amazing we are right now. We're super We've gone Super Saiyan, all right? We've got the power of Omen. There's no way we can lose, all right? And then we cut to the West Village with Sanji, all right? And now we are seeing Sanji, basically his fight being set up for the rest of this arc, okay? And it is going to be amazing because now we are in the West Village, all right? And Sanji has now gone over to fight Killingham. Now, before this battle began, I and a lot of people thought, okay, this doesn't make sense. Why would Sanji be fighting Killingham? Because Sanji can't fight women, and we're going to find out, get confirmation in this, and then also the fact that it would have been more entertaining for me to see Sanji fight Summers, because Summers is an abusive piece of shit to women, and Sanji's whole thing is you don't strike a woman no matter what, and so for him to finally get that kind of, you know, I'm going to say just attention or just like, you know, kind of beat down from somebody who is, you know, a chivalrous man who does love and cherish women, opposed to Summers who just abuses them like just for the love of the game. That would be great. But no, Summers doesn't do that. We don't see the fight. And so Sanji goes to the West Village to fight Killingham. All right. Although it would be fun to see Killingham manifest his biggest fears, like, you know, being like your family or all that shit. But no, that's it. And then Sanji responds, okay, he finally arrives in the West Village and he sees what's going on with the rain god Zaza pouring things down on them, right? He says, problem number one, there's a giant blob monster trying to kidnap the kids. Okay, that's a problem. There's a giant, it's even bigger than the giants, all right? Sanji continues on from there. He's like, all right, the plan is to deal with that. But the problem is their mothers are crying their eyes out, all right? And I can't stand that, all right? I can't stand to see the mothers crying their eyes out, all right? And he keeps trying to kidnap the kids, all right? But he can't save the brats because the problem is number two. So the first problem is this giant blob monster that's basically grabbing up the kids. It's bigger than the giants. And all the mothers are trying to save their little kids, but they can't do it, all right? But then he says problem number two, okay? I can't fight this thing because it's a woman. Yes, all right? That is even though it's a monster, even though it's a figment of imagination, all right? I cannot deal with this monster directly. I can't fight it head on, okay? And that's the truth of it. Remember, okay? Sanji, canonically, cannot fight women, no matter what. That is something that was established all the way back in Enies Lobby, no matter what. Even if he's being killed by a woman, if he's being brutalized, okay? He can never put his hands on a woman, no matter what, okay? That is fact. It has been established that he can't do this, and a lot of people were like, okay, how is Sanji going to fight Killingham? Because he can't fight a Zaza directly. He's got to fight Killingham, and he can't fight a woman. Even if it's a, you know, even if it's a rain god made out of someone's imagination or biggest fears, all right? And we also see just how big Zaza is because, man, Zaza is massive, like dwarfs the giants' houses and just completely demolishes anything that the giants are throwing at it. And then we just continue to see everybody just get absolutely poured down because, again, this makes sense. Zaza is a figment of Killingham's imagination, his biggest fear. And Killingham explained, way back when this when the battle first started, Zaza is the thing Celestial Dragons fear most, even more than Nika, even the clan of the D, all right? They fear Zaza the Rain God because this gets into the aspect of, you know, rain purifies and fire destroys. And so this Zaza's rain basically stands at the very top of everything. And so it will purify and wash away the filth that is the Celestial Dragon. So that fits. And so it's very powerful. And we see Zaza just basically absolutely just really wasted the entire West Village, and the giants are powerless to stop it. And Sanji remarks, and the warriors won't stop at anything until the kids are safe. And then we see just a gut-wrenching panel of Ripley, all right? And then Ripley, who's heavily injured by Summer's thorns, all right? She immediately rushes to her son, Colin. She cries out, Colin, my baby, please. And then we see Colin crying out for his mother, telling her he can't get away, he's sorry. And, okay, first off, Ripley, I hope she doesn't die because in this arc, we've had 4 dead mothers. We've had Estrid, Ida, Magnolia, and in the most recent chapters, Candel. So we're now up to 4 mothers who've been killed in this arc. Okay, so yeah, no, Oda really doesn't like moms, and he explained years ago. He was like, yeah, why do you kill off moms? He's like, well, because if characters' mothers were alive, they wouldn't need to go off on an adventure. I'm like, really? That's the reason why. That's the reason why we're doing this. That's the reason why we need to have a whole thing about, hey, we need to kill their moms. We need to make sure they all die or some shit. No, that's it. Okay, well, we see what's going to happen from here. All right. And then Sanji basically says, okay, then there's a problem 3. I can't stand to see a woman, I can't see this woman cry if I don't join their fight because I know. Because now Sanji says he's seeing all the mothers cry and he can't stand to see this. He can't just sit back and let these kids get taken, all right? And so Sanji then begins to move out, and then he immediately lands his attack on Killingham. He just moves straight to hit him, and then he finds Killingham. He's like, it's because you're here. It's all your fault. Even if the Giants lose sight of you, I'll find you, all right? Because Sanji's specialty is observation Haki, and the Giants are focused on saving their kids and fighting Zaza, so Sanji now is good to fight Killingham. Now, Killingham, we don't know the limitations of his Kieran powers, if he can summon more than one creature from some of his fears. I'm going to say, I know for certain we know he could, but Zaza's his own fear, so we'll see what goes from there. And then Sanji says, hey, you can't outrun me, all right? I'm the fastest person on my crew. I got you, all right? And then, we see Killingham respond, good grief, you're really a tough one, all right? And then Sanji lands on the roof, and he's like, tells him, okay, I'm ending this here. I'm beating you once and for all, right? And then Killingham responds, you may be tough, Sanji, but there's a big difference between being tough and immortal. Now, Harold was made semi-immortal, and he still was killed with enough Conqueror's Haki. Now, there's Sage immortality. Like, for example, there's immortality where you don't age, or you can recover from any injury, or immortality where you can be eventually overtaxed and be killed. We see a lot of characters who have that kind of immortality infection, but for the God's Knights, I'm guessing it's one of three kinds. It's the immortality where they heal, so they can't be killed directly unless they're using Conqueror's Haki, or it's the immortality where they just straight can't be killed no matter what. Now, we've seen God's Knights be killed. We've seen Harold was killed. He was a God's Knight, and he got obliterated by Loki. Granted, Harold was trying to hold back and tell his son to kill him, but still, we see that happen, all right? And then we see Killingham respond, there's no way you can beat me, all right? Your assessment is right, though. If I were out of commission, that would basically stop my demons, all right? Would stop my dream demons, all right? And so now we're getting the fight set up between Sanji and Killingham, all right? And Sanji's going to need extra. He's going to need extra because normal Sanji's not going to be enough. He needs to go super. He needs to go plus ultra. Take any reference you want from there, all right? And then we continue the back and forth between Killingham and Summers, and Sanji's like, hey, Summers like, hey, go ahead. Let's see if you can take me out, all right? Let's see if you can take out the rain god Zaza. Onward, Zaza. Take out these little brats. Let's go, all right? And then, Sanji's like, well, okay, this is kind of terrifying, but I know your weakness. I know your weakness. I know how I can beat you. All right, Killingham. I know how I can beat you. And then Killingham's like, oh, really? So you figured it out. You figured out my weakness. How interesting. All right. And then so Killingham responds, so you're saying you have Conqueror's Haki? You have Conqueror's Haki? Is that what you're saying? And then we see a clash between Killingham and Sanji, and Sanji just immediately gets flying sent back. All right, and then Killingham tells him, all right, if you have Conqueror's Haki, then go ahead and try and kill me. And then we just see from there, Sanji just gets crash landed into the crew. Now, side tangent. Remember when we saw Zoro first in Conqueror's Haki, we all knew it was coming, and we were cool with it. Now, a lot of people online were like, oh no, Sanji can't get Conqueror's Haki. It's going to mess up the dynamic of the crew. I'm like, bro, Roger had 3 people with Conqueror's Haki on his crew, 4 if you count Shanks, and you had him, you had Rayleigh, Scopper, Odin, and Shanks if you count him, but Shanks was an apprentice pirate, so we don't count him. Rox had 3 people, Big Mom, Kaido, and Whitebeard. Okay, now Kaido was also kind of an apprentice pirate, but again, if you do want to count him, fine. Having multiple Conqueror's Haki under you is not the issue, and this fits because if Scopper Gaban, Roger's left-hand man, all right, the 3rd strongest on his crew, although if you ask Scopper, he'd say number 2, so he's like, no, I'm stronger than her. I'm number 2, okay? I'm the number 2 on the Roger Pirates, and we all know Zoro was number 2 on the Strawhats, and we all know Rayleigh was number 2 on the Roger Pirates, so listen, guys, don't worry, Sanji, all right, you're going to get your moment. You're going to get your moment to shine because Sanji will awaken Conqueror's Haki in this fight. He will use it for the first time, which, remember when Kaido said, being able to infuse your attacks with Conqueror's Haki is extremely rare and a hard feat to do because very few characters can do this ability, okay? It is a hard technique. There's a reason why we didn't see a lot of people use it, all right? Katsukuri can't use it. Don Chinjiao can't use it. Doflamingo can't use it. And so, the several other characters we've seen being able to infuse their attacks with Conqueror's Haki are Roger, Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Luffy. Then we have Harold, Loki, Rox, Garp. I guess it's actually more than I thought. Okay, and then we cut away with Sanji, and then he responds, okay, so we cut back to the flashback he had with Scopper Gaban. And Skyberg goes on and tells him, he's like, your captain is one of the 4 emperors, all right? You must be meticulous if you intend to have his back. And this is when he was talking to Zoro, when he says, Zoro, your Conqueror's Haki is leaking everywhere, and you don't know you have it? And then Luffy's like, wait, you didn't know? It's been oozing out of you this whole time. How did you not know? And then Sanji Zoro replies, oh yeah, sorry about that, fam. That was my mistake, my error, my bad, my B. And then Sanji immediately walks up and he's like, hey, Gramps, what about me? Do I have it? Do I have Conqueror's Haki? Can I use Conqueror's Haki? And then we're going to see continuation of the conversation. We see Scopper's response. Because Scopper says straight up, right here, he says, you have the traits of one who might. Really? But then Gabon explains, but I get the impression you've been burning yourself with painful uncertainty. For one to manifest to be a king, for the manifestation of one must be a king. And then he sees Luffy, all right? And then Sanji's thinking about Luffy. And so then he says he truly wants to be Pirate King with all his heart. And so then we see immediately, so thou finally revealed yourself. And then we see this absolute gorgeous color spread. Not color spread, but just double panel, okay? Luffy in his Nika form, in Joy Boy, in Gear 5, rearing back his fist, all right? And then we see him just standing on business, all right? And then we see him just looking at, ready to square up against Imu. And then we see Imu in the air with him. And then we see a title where it says, Saint Nerona Imu versus Monkey D. Luffy. It is happening. Luffy is fighting the king of the world. It is go time. It is Boxing Day, baby. Let's fucking go. And then Luffy responds, don't go call me whatever you want. The name's Luffy, all right? You're the one who's going to, I'm going to be the man who's going to be king of the pirates, all right? And so it doesn't look like there's going to be a break next week, so end of chapter there, all right? And so we have now the fight set up between Zoro and Summers, Killingham and Zoro, and Luffy versus Imu, all right? And there's no break next week. There's going to be a special cover and color spread for issue that's celebrating One Piece's 29th anniversary. And that's all the main thing. So now I'm going to give you all my thoughts. Okay, so the first thing about the whole Sanji bit, okay? This makes sense for Sanji. Because Sanji's whole thing is, when Kaban explains, I get the impression you're burdening yourself with a painful uncertainty, okay? For one to manifest, you have to be a king. You have to want it. You have to actually desire to be a king. You have to express confidence, okay? Remember, Sanji's whole backstory with his family in the Vinsmokes is he was repeatedly abused for being a quote-unquote failure, even though he wasn't really a failure. His mom just basically messed with his DNA when she drank the poison, which caused him to develop his derma powers later. But no, he was also deemed a failure because he showed empathy, that he preferred cooking instead of fighting, and he didn't care for any of this. And Sanji has a lot of self-loathing. This makes sense because remember, he doesn't see himself, he doesn't want to be a conqueror because that means he'd be like his family, his father Judge, who he absolutely despises. And for Sanji to exude the qualities of a king, a ruler, that means dredging up all those painful insecurities he had growing up. And he does not want to deal with that, okay? He doesn't want to deal with that. And a lot of things like Conqueror's Haki are basically tied to your mental state of being, your emotion. I'm going to probably use a bad example, but Ace. Ace had Conqueror's Haki, but he didn't exude the qualities of a conqueror because he just didn't want to be like his father, Roger. So that makes sense for Zoro, for Ace, all right? And also makes sense for Sanji because he doesn't want to express those conqueror's qualities because that would mean he would be exactly like his family. Sanji would be just like his father, Judge. He would just be like his brothers, Ichi, Ninji, and Yonji, and he doesn't want to deal with that, okay? And so he's been basically suppressing a huge part of his power this entire time. And so it makes sense that you've been dealing with painful uncertainty, okay? And so you have to basically, Goblin tells him, listen, if you want this, you're going to have to want it. So whatever issues you have, you got to have to work through it, all right? And Sanji's thinking back, Luffy, he wants to be king of the pirates with all his heart. It's something that he just burns in his desire, all right? So whatever Sanji's burning ambition is in this moment, when Zoro was fighting against King on the rooftop of Onigashima, it tells him, hey, okay, I'm going to be the king of hell. I'm going to be the man who's going to make Luffy's dreams a reality. Okay, I'm going to be the king of hell, so to speak. And so we see Zoro come into his own, although he didn't know he had Conqueror's Haki until ELBAPH. So he went through an entire arc without him knowing he's got Conqueror's Haki. But no, we just see it. And so we see Sanji try to deal with his internal issues and hopefully get out of it, all right? And then we see the fight with Luffy, and Luffy is now squaring up against Imu. The king of the world is now fighting the Devil Man. The king of the world, the Devil Man, is fighting Joy Boy, Nika's incarnation. And so we are finally here. We are finally getting this fight. Now, I think what we're going to get is we're going to get Zoro and Summer's fight sprinkled in with Luffy and Imu. And then we're going to get Sanji and Killingham's fight sprinkled in with Luffy and Imu. And then we're going to get a proper focus on Luffy and Imu. And then we also might get cuts of Brook and Shuri's reunion. But yeah, that's it. One Piece chapter 1187. All right. It doesn't look like there's going to be a break next week. I'm surprised because we've had 3 chapters in a row if we include the next week. So usually I think we're due for one. But no, we're getting 3 chapters. Oda's like, yeah, no. The last volume was 13. So I have to keep some more chapters coming out. So if I can keep that pace up with regular. But anyway, until then, I'm your boy Malik. Y'all have a wonderful day and happy 4th of July if you're watching this.